The morning everything went wrong, Rachel Monroe stood on the crowded subway platform, clutching her portfolio case like a lifeline. Today was supposed to be different. Today was supposed to be the day that changed everything. She had spent 3 months perfecting her design samples, rehearsing answers to potential interview questions, and carefully selecting the perfect navy blazer that made her look professional without trying too hard. What she had not planned for was the coffee tsunami. The train lurched as it pulled into Grand Central Station, and the businessman beside her lost his grip on his extra-large caramel macchiato. Time seemed to slow as Rachel watched the cup arc through the air, rotating in perfect slow motion before exploding across her chest like a caffeine bomb. "Oh no," she whispered, looking down at the spreading brown stain that now decorated her carefully chosen blazer and white blouse. "No, no, no." The businessman muttered a half-hearted apology before disappearing into the crowd, leaving Rachel standing there like a contestant on the world's worst game show. She had exactly 40 minutes to get to the Nexus Media Group headquarters for the most important interview of her life, and she looked like she had just lost a fight with a Starbucks. The decision to keep going, most people would have called it quits right there. Most people would have rescheduled, gone home to change, and lived to fight another day. But Rachel Monroe was not most people. She had been raised by a single mother who worked 3 jobs to keep them afloat, who taught her that giving up was never an option, that sometimes you had to show up to life's biggest moments, looking less than perfect. So Rachel made a choice. She bought a pack of wet wipes from a street vendor, did her best to clean up the worst of the damage, and kept moving forward. By the time she reached the gleaming glass tower that housed Nexus Media Group, her heart was hammering so hard she could hear it in her ears. The lobby was everything she expected. Marble floors, abstract sculptures that probably cost more than her annual rent, and a reception desk that looked like it belonged in a spaceship. Behind it sat a woman whose perfectly styled hair and immaculate makeup made Rachel acutely aware of her coffee-stained disaster. "Name," the receptionist said without looking up. "Rachel Monroe. I have an interview at 10 for the junior designer position." The receptionist finally glanced up, and her eyes widened slightly as she took in Rachel's appearance. "I see. Please take a seat. Someone will call you shortly." The waiting room of judgment, the waiting area, contained 5 other candidates, all of whom looked like they had stepped out of a fashion magazine. Not a wrinkle, not a stain, not a single hair out of place. They glanced at Rachel with barely concealed surprise and what might have been pity. A woman in a cream-colored pantsuit leaned over. "Did something happen to you?" Rachel forced a smile. "Just a small incident with gravity and coffee. Nothing major." "Oh, honey," the woman said with false sympathy. "Maybe you should reschedule. First impressions matter in this business." Before Rachel could respond, a severe-looking woman in her 50s emerged from the elevator bank. Her silver hair was pulled into a tight bun, and her expression suggested she had just smelled something unpleasant. "Patricia Reed, Director of Human Resources," she announced, her eyes scanning the waiting candidates before landing on Rachel with obvious disapproval. "I will be conducting the preliminary interviews." "Rachel Monroe." Rachel stood, gathering her portfolio. "That's me." Patricia's lips pressed into a thin line. "I can see that. Follow me, please." The interview that should not have happened. The interview room was all glass and chrome, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a spectacular view of the Manhattan skyline. Patricia sat behind a massive desk, reviewing Rachel's resume with an expression that suggested she was reading a grocery list, rather than someone's carefully crafted career summary. "Miss Monroe," Patricia began, not bothering to hide her disdain, "I have to ask. Did you consider that your appearance might reflect poorly on your judgment and professionalism?" Rachel took a deep breath. She could make excuses, could apologize and grovel, could try to explain the circumstances. Instead, she decided on honesty. "I did consider it," Rachel replied steadily, "for about 3 seconds on the subway platform. Then I remembered that my portfolio speaks louder than my blazer, that my work is more important than my appearance, and that any company worth working for would judge me on my abilities rather than an unfortunate accident with coffee." Patricia blinked. clearly not expecting that response. That is quite bold. It's honest, Rachel corrected. I could have rescheduled, but that would have wasted your time and mine. I could have gone home to change, but that would have suggested that I prioritize appearances over commitment. Instead, I chose to show up, ready to prove why I deserve this position regardless of what I'm wearing. For a moment, Patricia seemed at a loss for words. Then her expression hardened. Your portfolio, please. Rachel opened her case and spread her best work across the desk. Campaign mock-ups for brands that did not exist yet. Logo designs that told stories. Color palettes that evoked emotions. Each piece represented late nights and early mornings. Countless revisions and rejected pitches. The accumulated proof of her passion and dedication. Patricia flipped through them with mechanical efficiency, her face revealing nothing. These are adequate. However, I am not sure you would be a good fit for our corporate culture. We value polish and presentation at Nexus, and I value substance over style, Rachel replied, though I am capable of both when not assaulted by rogue beverages. The unexpected observer, what neither of them noticed, was the figure standing just outside the glass conference room. James Blackwell had been on his way to his top-floor office when he spotted the interview in progress. Something about the coffee-stained woman gesturing passionately at her portfolio made him pause. He had built Nexus Media Group from a small startup in his garage into a billion-dollar empire, and he prided himself on recognizing talent when he saw it. Not the polished, rehearsed talent that walked through their doors every day, but raw, authentic ability that could not be faked. James pushed open the door, causing both women to turn in surprise. Mr. Blackwell, Patricia stammered, standing quickly. I was not expecting you. This is just a preliminary interview for the junior designer position. James ignored her, his attention fixed on Rachel and her spread of work. He moved closer to the desk, studying each piece with the intensity of a jeweler examining diamonds. Rachel held her breath, acutely aware that the legendary CEO of Nexus Media Group was now scrutinizing her entire professional life. Did you design these yourself? James asked, his voice quiet but commanding. Yes, sir. Every concept, every color choice, every detail. He picked up a campaign mock-up for a fictional sustainable fashion brand. Tell me about this one. Rachel forgot about her stained clothes, forgot about Patricia's disapproval, forgot about everything except her work. The brief I created for myself was to rebrand sustainability as aspirational rather than sacrificial. Too many eco-friendly brands focus on what you are giving up instead of what you are gaining. This campaign positions sustainable fashion as elevated, desirable, and forward-thinking rather than restrictive. James studied her face as she spoke, watching the passion light up her features. And the color palette? Why these specific shades? Earth tones are expected for sustainability, Rachel explained, warming to her subject. I wanted to subvert that expectation. These blues and silvers suggest innovation and future, while the warm accents maintain the human connection. The message is that caring for the planet is not about returning to the past, but building a better future. A slow smile spread across James's face. He turned to Patricia. Cancel the rest of today's interviews. Patricia's eyes widened. Excuse me? Miss Monroe, James said, extending his hand to Rachel. How would you feel about starting tomorrow as my personal creative director? The room fell absolutely silent. Rachel stared at his outstretched hand as if it might be a hallucination brought on by stress and caffeine fumes. I'm sorry, what? You heard me correctly. I need someone on my team who shows up even when circumstances are against them, who values substance over appearance, and who can think creatively under pressure. That stain on your blazer tells me more about your character than 1,000 perfect interviews ever could. Patricia found her voice. Mr. Blackwell, with all due respect, this is highly irregular. We have protocols, procedures, background checks. Then expedite them, James said smoothly, his eyes never leaving Rachel's face. Miss Monroe, I am offering you a position that typically requires 5 years of experience and an impressive portfolio. You have the portfolio, the experience you will gain working directly with me. What do you say? Rachel's mind raced. This could not be real. Things like this did not happen to people like her. Billionaire CEOs did not hire coffee-stained designers on the spot. There had to be a catch, a hidden camera, a cosmic joke. But as she looked into James Blackwell's eyes, she saw something she recognized, the hunger of someone who had fought for everything they had, who understood what it meant to take a chance when the odds were stacked against you. "I say yes," Rachel replied, taking his hand. "When do I start?" "Tomorrow morning, 8 sharp. And Miss Monroe?" James smiled. "Feel free to wear whatever you want. Just maybe avoid the subway coffee bombers." As Patricia sputtered protests and Rachel tried to process what had just happened, neither of them realized that this impulsive decision would set in motion a chain of events that would challenge everything they thought they knew about success, trust, and taking chances on the unexpected. The aftermath of an impossible date. 20 minutes later, Rachel stood on the sidewalk outside Nexus Media Group headquarters. Her phone pressed to her ear as she tried to explain to her best friend Casey what had just happened. "Let me get this straight," Casey said slowly. "You showed up to an interview covered in coffee, got lectured by some corporate ice queen, and then the billionaire CEO walked in and hired you on the spot?" "That is exactly what happened," Rachel confirmed. Still not quite believing it herself, "This sounds like the beginning of a romance novel. It's a job." "Casey, an incredible, life-changing, possibly too good to be true job. But just a job." "Sure," Casey replied, her voice dripping with skepticism. "Just a job working directly for one of the most eligible bachelors in New York. Nothing potentially complicated about that at all." Rachel laughed despite herself. "You are reading way too much into this. James Blackwell hired me because of my work, not because of some fairy tale reason. This is about talent and timing, nothing more, if you say so." "But Rachel, be careful. Men like that, men with that much power and money, they are used to getting what they want. Just make sure you know what he really wants." After hanging up, Rachel replayed the day's events in her mind. The disaster on the subway, Patricia's barely concealed contempt. The moment James Blackwell walked into that conference room and changed her life with a single decision. She thought about the way he had studied her work, the intensity in his eyes, the conviction in his voice when he offered her the position. Casey's warning echoed in her thoughts, but Rachel pushed it aside. She had not fought her way through art school while working 2 jobs, survived countless rejections and setbacks, just to second-guess an opportunity when it finally arrived. Whatever happened next, whatever challenges lay ahead, she would face them the same way she faced this morning, by showing up even when things were messy, and giving it everything she had as Rachel headed home to prepare for her first day at Nexus Media Group. She had no idea that her life was about to become far more complicated than a simple coffee stain could ever suggest. That the chemistry between her and James Blackwell would spark tensions, jealousies, and corporate intrigue that would test everything she believed about herself. But that was tomorrow's problem. Tonight, she had a celebration to plan and a stained blazer to burn. The first day reality. Check Rachel arrived at Nexus Media Group headquarters at 7:30. A full 30 minutes before her scheduled start time. This time, she wore a crisp, black blazer she had borrowed from Casey, paired with tailored pants and shoes that actually matched. Her portfolio bag was organized, her hair was styled, and she had triple-checked that no coffee cups were within a 5-foot radius during her entire commute. The receptionist from yesterday gave her a knowing smile. "Miss Monroe, Mr. Blackwell is expecting you on the 42nd floor. Tommy will show you up." A young man with spiky black hair and an infectious grin appeared beside her. "Tommy Liu, senior intern and unofficial office guide. Welcome to the circus." As they rode the elevator up, Tommy provided rapid-fire commentary. "So you are the coffee girl everyone is talking about. Legend move, by the way. Patricia has been interviewing candidates for that position for 3 months, and James hired you in like 5 minutes. The office is buzzing. Buzzing good or buzzing bad?" Rachel asked nervously. "Both," Tommy admitted cheerfully. "Half the office thinks you are some kind of genius. The other half thinks you must have dirt on James or something. Patricia is in the second camp, by the way. She spent yesterday afternoon calling every reference you listed. Rachel's stomach dropped. And they all said you are brilliant but stubborn. Which apparently is exactly what James was hoping to hear, Tommy grinned. Fair warning, though. Patricia does not lose gracefully. Watch your back. The elevator doors opened onto a sprawling open office space that looked like it had been designed by someone who believed creativity could be manufactured through exposed brick and standing desks. Employees glanced up as Rachel passed, their expressions ranging from curious to hostile. Tommy led her to a glass-walled office in the corner. This is you. James's office is right through that door. He likes to keep his creative director close. The office was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows, a massive desk with dual monitors, and walls covered in corkboard waiting for inspiration. But what caught Rachel's attention was the coffee maker on the side table, complete with a handwritten note. Welcome to Nexus, James. Rachel smiled despite her nerves. Maybe this would not be so bad after all. The welcome that was another optimism lasted approximately 2 hours. The morning meeting was Rachel's introduction to the executive team. And it became immediately clear that not everyone shared James's enthusiasm for his impulsive hiring decision. Patricia sat at the far end of the conference table, her expression carved from ice. Beside her sat Gregory Chen, the chief financial officer, whose skeptical gaze tracked Rachel like a predator watching prey. Let me understand this correctly, Gregory said, his voice dripping with condescension. You are 26 years old, you have never worked for a major corporation, and you expect to provide creative direction for our most important clients. James cut in before Rachel could respond. Rachel will be working primarily with me on new business development and brand innovation. She brings a fresh perspective that our existing team lacks. With all due respect, Patricia interjected, fresh perspective is not a substitute for experience. Our clients expect a certain level of polish and professional maturity. Rachel felt heat rising in her cheeks, but forced herself to remain calm. I understand your concerns. My portfolio speaks to my capabilities, but I know I have a lot to learn about corporate culture. I am here to contribute, not to coast on Mr. Blackwell's faith in me. How refreshing, Patricia replied with a smile that could freeze water. Self-awareness is so rare these days. The meeting continued in that vein for another 40 minutes, with various executives either ignoring Rachel entirely or asking questions clearly designed to expose her inexperience. By the time James dismissed everyone, Rachel felt like she had survived a gladiatorial combat rather than a staff meeting. Tommy caught her in the hallway afterward. That was brutal. Patricia really has it out for you. Why, though? Rachel asked. I have not done anything to her. You exist, Tommy replied simply. Patricia spent 15 years working her way up from assistant to HR director. She believes in paying dues, following protocols, and climbing ladders. You skipped all of that. In her worldview, you are everything wrong with modern business culture. Rachel slumped against the wall. This is going to be harder than I thought. Welcome to corporate politics, Tommy said sympathetically. But hey, you have got James in your corner. That counts for a lot. Just deliver great work and ignore the haters. The project that changed everything, Rachel threw herself into work with desperate intensity. She knew everyone was watching, waiting for her to fail, to prove that James had made a terrible mistake. So she worked late, arrived early, and poured every ounce of creativity into the projects James assigned her. 2 weeks into her tenure, James called her into his office for what he called a critical opportunity. A major athletic apparel company was looking to rebrand their entire women's line. Nexus was competing against 3 other agencies for the contract. The pitch was in 5 days. I want you to lead the creative, James said, leaning back in his chair. This is a $12 million account. If we win it, the commission alone will cover your salary for the next decade. Rachel felt panic surge through her chest. Lead, James? I have been here 2 weeks. Should not Patricia, or Gregory, or literally anyone with more experience take point on this? They have experience, James agreed. But they do not have your vision. I have seen how you think, how you approach problems from unexpected angles. That is what this client needs, even if they do not know it yet, and if I fail. James met her eyes steadily. Then we fail together. But I do not think you will. The next 4 days were a blur of sleepless nights and caffeine-fueled creativity sessions. Rachel developed a campaign concept that positioned women's athletic wear not as a separate category, but as the future of all athletic wear. Her tagline was simple: "We do not make clothes for women. We make clothes for athletes who happen to be women." Tommy became her unofficial assistant, helping with mock-ups and presentations. Even some of the junior designers who had been cold to her initially started warming up as they saw the scope of her vision. But Patricia was a different story. On the night before the pitch, Rachel was working late when she discovered that someone had deleted half of her presentation files from the shared server. Hours of work gone. The backup system had mysteriously failed, and her laptop, which contained local copies, would not turn on. Rachel sat at her desk, fighting back tears of frustration and exhaustion. This was sabotage, pure and simple. Someone wanted her to fail spectacularly. Problem? James's voice came from behind her. Rachel explained the situation, trying to keep her voice steady. James's expression darkened as he listened. "Do you have any of the original sketches? Anything physical?" "My notebook," Rachel said, pulling out a battered sketchbook. "But these are just rough concepts. The finished designs are gone." James studied the sketches, his mind clearly working. "These are better than finished. They show process, thinking, evolution. We will pitch from these. It cannot be serious. This is a $12 million client. They expect polish and professionalism, not chicken scratch in a notebook." "They expect innovation," James corrected, "and authenticity. We will show them both. Trust me on this. It's a pitch that should not have worked the next morning." Rachel walked into the conference room feeling like she was heading to her own execution. The client team consisted of 5 executives, including their formidable CEO, Margaret Hughes, a woman known for reducing seasoned marketers to tears. Patricia sat in the back of the room, her expression suggesting she already knew how this would end. James began the presentation with his usual confidence. But when it came time for Rachel to present her creative vision, he did something unexpected. He handed the meeting over to her completely. "Rachel Monroe is our creative director," James announced. "She will walk you through her vision for your brand's future." Rachel took a deep breath and stepped forward with her notebook. "I am going to be honest with you," she began. "Our polished presentation was sabotaged last night. All I have are these sketches and my conviction that your brand deserves better than what you've been getting." The room fell silent. Patricia looked gleeful. Gregory looked horrified. Margaret Hughes leaned forward with interest. "Go on, Margaret," said Rachel, opened her notebook, and began talking through her vision. Without the safety net of finished slides and mock-ups, she had to rely purely on her passion and understanding of the brand. She talked about the power of stopping treating women athletes as a niche market. She explained how their competitors were all making the same mistake, creating pink versions of men's products instead of designing for actual female athletes. "Your brand has the opportunity to lead a revolution," Rachel said, her voice growing stronger. "Not by making special clothes for women, but by recognizing that elite female athletes have been driving innovation in sports performance for years. We do not design for them. We design with them, and everyone benefits." She flipped through page after page of raw sketches, telling stories about each concept, explaining the thinking behind every choice. It was messy, unpolished, and completely authentic. When she finished, the room was quiet for a long moment. Then Margaret Hughes smiled. "That was the most honest pitch I have heard in 20 years. When can you start?" The aftermath of Success the Office erupted when news spread that Nexus had won the account. Rachel found herself surrounded by congratulatory colleagues, including many who had ignored her just days before. Tommy Bear hugged her so enthusiastically he nearly knocked her over, but the person Rachel most wanted to see was James. She found him in his office, watching the celebration through his glass wall with an expression she could not quite read. "You did it," he said when she entered. "Not just won the account. You proved something important. That I can function under pressure." "That I was right about you," James replied. "And that takes considerable courage to admit, given my ego." Rachel laughed, feeling the tension of the past 2 weeks finally release. Thank you for believing in me, especially when I did not believe in myself. James stood and walked around his desk, stopping close enough that Rachel could smell his cologne. I need to tell you something. About the deleted files? Rachel's smile faded. You know who did it? We are investigating. But Rachel, this was not random. Someone in this company wants you gone badly enough to commit corporate sabotage. You need to be careful. Let me guess. Patricia. I cannot prove it yet, but yes, that is my suspicion. James's jaw tightened. I will not let anyone drive you out of this company, but you should know what you are up against. I can handle Patricia, Rachel said with more confidence than she felt. I know you can, but you should not have to handle it alone. James paused, seeming to wrestle with something. Rachel, there is another reason I hired you. Beyond your talent. Rachel's heart began beating faster. What reason? Because when I saw you in that conference room, covered in coffee and refusing to back down, I saw someone who reminded me of myself before I became this. He gestured at his expensive suit, his corner office, the empire outside. Someone who still fought for things, who still believed passion mattered more than polish. I have spent 10 years building this company, and somewhere along the way, I forgot why I started. The air between them felt charged with something dangerous and electric. Rachel knew she should step back, should maintain professional distance, should remember that this man was her boss, and that mixing business with anything personal was a disaster waiting to happen instead. She stepped closer. James, she said softly, this is complicated. Everything worth having is complicated, he replied. Before either of them could close the remaining distance, Tommy burst through the door. Rachel, they want you at the celebration dinner. Margaret Hughes specifically requested you sit with the client team. The moment shattered. James stepped back, his professional mask sliding into place so smoothly. Rachel almost believed she had imagined the vulnerability in his eyes. Go, James said. Enjoy your victory. You earned it. Rachel left, but she could feel his eyes on her back the entire way. The celebration and the warning the dinner was at an upscale restaurant in Midtown. The kind of place where the menu did not list prices and the wine cost more than Rachel's monthly rent. She found herself seated between Margaret Hughes and one of her vice presidents, fielding questions about her background and design philosophy. Across the table, Patricia watched with barely concealed hostility. When Margaret excused herself to take a call, Patricia leaned forward. Enjoy your moment in the sun, Miss Monroe, Patricia said quietly enough that only Rachel could hear. But remember that stars burn out quickly in this business, especially shooting stars. Is that a threat? Rachel asked calmly. It is a prediction based on 20 years of observation. James Blackwell has championed many young talents over the years. Very few survive the reality of working at his side. The pressure, the expectations, the jealousy it creates. Patricia smiled coldly. You think today was hard? You have no idea what is coming. Then I guess I will find out, Rachel replied. But I am still going to be here when you make your next prediction. Patricia's smile turned sharp. We will see about that. The rest of the dinner passed in a blur of congratulations and champagne toasts. By the time Rachel made it home, exhausted and exhilarated, it was past midnight. She collapsed on her couch, still in her dress clothes, staring at her phone. There was a text from James, sent an hour ago. We're magnificent tonight. Get some rest. Tomorrow we start changing everything. Rachel stared at those words, her thumb hovering over the reply button. She thought about Patricia's warning, about the dangerous chemistry between her and James, about how quickly her life had transformed from struggling designer to the center of corporate intrigue. She should be cautious. She should be smart. She should protect her heart and her career by maintaining clear boundaries. Instead, she typed, I am ready. For all of it, she hit send before she could second-guess herself, then turned off her phone and tried to sleep. But her mind kept replaying the moment in James's office. The way he had looked at her, the electricity that crackled between them when they stood too close. Rachel knew she was standing at a crossroads. One path led to safety, professionalism, and a successful but predictable career. The other led into unknown territory, filled with risk and possibility, and the kind of connection that could either elevate her or destroy everything she had worked for. As she finally drifted off to sleep, Rachel realized she had already made her choice. She had made it the moment she decided to show up to that interview covered in coffee. To fight for her place in a world that did not think she belonged. She was not here to play it safe. She was here to burn bright. Even if it meant eventually burning out, tomorrow would bring new challenges, new battles, and new moments that would test exactly how much she was willing to risk for something extraordinary. But that was tomorrow's problem. The morning after everything changed, 3 months had passed since Rachel won the Hughes Athletics account, and life at Nexus Media Group had become a delicate balance of professional triumph and personal tension. Winning 2 more major accounts and earning grudging respect from most of the executive team. Most, but not all. Patricia's campaign against her had grown more sophisticated, moving from obvious sabotage to subtle undermining. Comments in meetings about Rachel's lack of formal business training. Questions about whether her creative vision was really sustainable long-term. Whispers that perhaps James's judgment had been clouded by factors other than professional merit. The worst part was that Patricia was not entirely wrong. The connection between Rachel and James had grown deeper and more complicated with every late-night work session, every shared victory, every moment when their eyes met across a conference room and the rest of the world seemed to fade away. They had not crossed any lines, had maintained scrupulous professionalism in public. But the tension was becoming impossible to ignore. Everyone could see it. The way James's entire demeanor softened when Rachel entered a room. The way Rachel's best ideas emerged during their one-on-one strategy sessions. The way they orbited each other like binary stars, locked in gravitational pull, they both knew was dangerous but could not resist. Tommy had warned Rachel a dozen times. Casey had delivered increasingly worried lectures about workplace romances and power dynamics. Even Margaret Hughes, who had become an unexpected mentor, had gently suggested that Rachel consider the potential complications. But Rachel had never been good at taking the safe path. That was how she ended up at Nexus in the first place. The morning everything came to a head started ordinarily enough. Rachel arrived at 7, coffee in hand, ready to prep for a presentation to a major cosmetics company. She found James already in his office, staring at his computer screen with an expression she had never seen before. Something between fury and devastation. James. She stepped inside, closing the door behind her. What is wrong? Turned the screen toward her. Showed a gossip website, the kind that specialized in society news and celebrity scandals. The headline made Rachel's blood run cold. Billionaire CEO James Blackwell's mystery woman, from coffee stains to corner office romance. Below it were photographs. Rachel leaving James's building late at night, the two of them at a business dinner. Caught in a moment where they were clearly looking at each other with more than professional interest. A grainy security camera image from the office, showing them standing close in what looked like an intimate moment. The article was a masterpiece of innuendo, suggesting everything while proving nothing. It questioned Rachel's qualifications, implied their relationship was inappropriate, and speculated about how this would affect Nexus's reputation with conservative clients. Patricia Rachel breathed. She leaked this. I know, James said quietly. My lawyers are already looking into it. But Rachel, the damage is done. The board is calling an emergency meeting this afternoon. They want answers. Rachel sank into a chair, her mind racing. This was it. The moment Patricia had been building toward. The trap that had been set the day James impulsively hired a coffee-stained designer and then compounded his error by falling for her. What do we tell them? Rachel asked. James was silent for a long moment. We tell them the truth. Which truth? That we have not crossed any lines. That we have maintained professionalism. We just happen to work incredible long hours together and sometimes look at each other like we are the only 2 people in the room. Rachel laughed bitterly. They will not believe us. I would not believe us. Then we tell them the other truth. James moved around his desk, kneeling in front of Rachel's chair so they were eye level. Yes, I care about you. that my feelings for you go beyond professional respect, and that despite those feelings, you have earned every success through your own talent and hard work. Rachel felt tears prick her eyes. James, they will crucify you. Your reputation, the company, everything you have built. I do not care. You should care, Rachel insisted. This is your life's work. I am not going to be the reason you lose it. The board meeting that decided everything, the emergency board meeting, was scheduled for 2 p.m. Rachel spent the morning drafting her resignation letter, ignoring Tommy's increasingly frantic texts, begging her not to do anything rash. She had made her decision. If walking away could protect James and preserve everything he had built, then that was what she would do. She loved him. She had not admitted it out loud, had barely admitted it to herself, but it was true. Somewhere, between coffee stains and corporate sabotage, between late nights and impossible victories, she had fallen completely in love with James Blackwell. And because she loved him, she would not let him sacrifice everything for her at 1:30. Rachel walked into James's office with her resignation letter in hand. He took one look at her face and shook his head. No, you do not know what I'm going to say. You are going to offer to resign, to fall on your sword, to protect me and the company? And my answer is no. Rachel, I will not accept your resignation. You do not have a choice, Rachel said, her voice breaking. James, this is the only way. If I leave, the scandal dies. Patricia wins, but at least Nexus survives intact. Patricia does not get to win, James replied fiercely. And I do not get to lose you because I was too much of a coward to fight for what matters. This is not about cowardice. This is about being smart, being strategic. No, James said, taking her hands. This is about choosing, and I choose you. I choose us. Whatever consequences come with that, we will face them together. Rachel wanted to argue, wanted to be noble and self-sacrificing. But looking into James's eyes, seeing the determination and vulnerability there, she found she did not have the strength to walk away. This could destroy everything, she whispered. Then we will build something new, James replied. The boardroom felt like a courtroom. 10 board members sat around the massive table, their expressions ranging from concerned to hostile. Patricia sat in the corner with barely concealed triumph. Gregory looked grimly satisfied, as if his worst predictions about Rachel had been confirmed. But there were allies too. Margaret Hughes had flown in from Atlanta specifically for this meeting, her presence a statement of support. 2 other board members who had praised Rachel's work looked uncomfortable but sympathetic. James stood at the head of the table. Rachel beside him. Her resignation letter sat in her bag, a backup plan if everything went wrong. The board chair, an older man named Robert Kane, opened the meeting. James, I think we all know why we are here. These allegations, true or not, are damaging to Nexus's reputation. We need to address them decisively. I agree, James said calmly. So let me be completely clear. Rachel Monroe is the most talented creative director this company has ever had. In 3 months, she has brought in $15 million in new business. Her campaigns have won industry awards and transformed how our clients think about branding. Every success she has achieved is the result of her exceptional ability, not favoritism. No one is questioning her talent, Patricia interjected smoothly. We are questioning the optics, the appearance of impropriety. There is no impropriety, James replied. Rachel and I have maintained absolute professionalism. But you have feelings for her, Gregory said bluntly. That much is obvious to anyone with eyes. How can we trust that your judgment is not compromised? Before James could respond, Margaret Hughes spoke up. Excuse me, but I've worked with dozens of agencies over my career. I have never seen a creative director with Rachel's instincts and integrity. Yes, she is young. Yes, her hiring was unconventional. But her results speak for themselves. Are we really going to penalize excellence because of gossip website speculation? Margaret, we appreciate your support, Robert said carefully. But this goes beyond one client's opinion. We have fiduciary responsibility to all shareholders. If James's personal feelings are affecting his business judgment, that is a problem. Rachel had stayed silent through this exchange, but now she found her voice. May I say something? Robert nodded. I came here to resign, Rachel began, and she heard James's sharp intake of breath beside her. I drafted my letter this morning because I believed that was the noble thing to do, the sacrifice that would protect everyone I care about. But I realize now that resigning would be surrendering to the idea that a woman's success must always be questioned, that there must always be some explanation for it other than merit. She pulled out her portfolio and set it on the table. This is my work. Before Nexus, during my time here, the campaigns that have won awards and clients and revenue, every piece represents my vision, my effort, my talent. No one gave me these abilities. No one handed me these ideas. I earned them, Patricia scoffed. No one disputes your abilities, Miss Monroe. But you cannot deny that your relationship with James has given you opportunities others did not receive. You are absolutely right, Rachel said, surprising everyone. James took a chance on me when no one else would. He saw potential in a coffee-stained disaster of a job candidate and offered her an extraordinary opportunity. That was not nepotism or favoritism. That was leadership. The kind of leadership that builds companies and changes industries. She turned to face James directly. As for my feelings, yes, I care about James Blackwell. I respect him. I admire him. And yes, I have fallen in love with him. Those feelings are real, and they are mine to own. But they have never compromised my work. If anything, they have made me work harder, push further, and refuse to accept anything less than excellence, because I refuse to be the weakness in his armor. The room fell silent. Rachel turned back to the board. So here is my offer. Give me 6 months. Judge me purely on results. If my work speaks for itself, then we continue. If there is any legitimate question about my merit, I will resign without contest. But I will not be driven out by gossip and innuendo from people who cannot accept that sometimes talent comes in unexpected packages. Margaret started a slow clap that gradually spread to several other board members. Even Robert looked impressed despite himself. Patricia, however, was not finished. This is all very stirring, but it does not address the real issue. James Blackwell is CEO of this company. His judgment affects billions in shareholder value. If he is making decisions based on emotion rather than logic, that is a crisis. Then maybe it is time for new leadership, James said quietly. The room froze. Gregory leaned forward. What are you saying? I am saying that if this board believes my feelings for Rachel compromise my judgment, then perhaps I should step down as CEO, promote Gregory, bring in an outside candidate, do whatever you think is best. But I will not sacrifice Rachel's career to appease corporate politics. No, Rachel said urgently. That is not what I want. That is not what anyone should want. This is my choice, James replied, looking at her with complete certainty. You taught me that sometimes showing up covered in coffee and refusing to quit is worth more than any polished performance. I am choosing to show up for you, for us. For the idea that we can build something meaningful together, both professionally and personally. Whatever consequences come with that, I accept them. Robert Kane looked around the table, reading the room. I think we need time to discuss this privately. James, Rachel, please wait outside. The hour that changed everything, Rachel and James sat in his office, neither speaking. The tension was suffocating. Through the glass walls, they could see Tommy watching anxiously from his desk, along with a dozen other employees who had picked up on the crisis. You should not have done that, Rachel finally said. Offered to step down. This company is your life. You're my life, James replied simply. The company is just what I do. You are who I want to be with. Rachel felt tears sliding down her cheeks. That is the most romantic and terrifying thing anyone has ever said to me. James smiled, reaching over to wipe away her tears. I have spent 10 years building Nexus. And every day, I have made the logical choice, the strategic decision, the move that protected the company above all else. But today, I finally made a choice that was just mine, and I do not regret it for a second. Before Rachel could respond, Robert Kane appeared in the doorway. We have reached a decision, he said. Please come back in. They walked back into the boardroom hand in hand, a statement that said more than words ever could. The board members watched them with varied expressions, impossible to read. Robert cleared his throat. James, this board has full confidence in your leadership and judgment. We believe the allegations in today's gossip article are exaggerated and potentially malicious. However, we do need to address the appearance of impropriety going forward. Rachel braced herself for the other shoe to drop. Therefore, Robert continued, we are creating a new oversight structure. Rachel Monroe will report to a creative council that includes Margaret Hughes and 2 other external advisors. This insulates both her and James from accusations of favoritism, while allowing Rachel to continue her excellent work. Additionally, we are launching a formal investigation into the source of today's leak. If corporate sabotage is confirmed, appropriate action will be taken. He looked directly at Patricia as he said this last part. Her face paled. Do you both find these terms acceptable? Robert asked. James looked at Rachel. She nodded, relief flooding through her. Yes, James said. Thank you for your trust. As they left the boardroom, Rachel noticed Patricia slipping out a side door. Her earlier confidence replaced by obvious concern. Tommy was waiting outside with barely contained excitement. So, he demanded, are you fired? Is James fired? Is everyone fired? Nobody is fired. Rachel laughed through her tears. We are all gainfully employed and apparently immune to scandal. Kami whooped and pulled her into a hug. I knew you would survive this. You are like a corporate cockroach, impossible to kill. That is the worst compliment I have ever received, Rachel replied. But she was smiling. 3 months later, the beginning of everything Nutha, scandal had died down within weeks. Especially after an internal investigation revealed that Patricia had indeed been the source of the leaked information. She had been quietly forced to resign, though she landed on her feet at a competitor agency. Gregory had softened somewhat after watching Rachel continue to deliver exceptional results under the new oversight structure, but the most significant change was in Rachel and James themselves. Free from hiding their feelings, their relationship had blossomed. They were careful to maintain professional boundaries at work, but everyone knew. The difference was that now they were not ashamed of it. On a Friday evening, Rachel stood in her new apartment, significantly nicer than her old place thanks to her promotion and raise, getting ready for a date. An actual, official. Not pretending it is a business dinner date with James. Her phone buzzed with a text from Casey. Still cannot believe you are dating a billionaire. What is next? You become an actual princess? Rachel laughed and typed back. Just a normal person who happened to show up to an interview covered in coffee and refused to quit when things got hard. Nothing special. You are my hero, Casey replied. Also, please bring him to dinner so I can interrogate his intentions. There was a knock on her door. Rachel opened it to find James standing there in jeans and a casual shirt, looking more relaxed than she had ever seen him. Ready? He asked. For what? You said it was a surprise. It is. Come on, he drove them out of the city, past suburbs and into countryside Rachel had not known existed so close to Manhattan. Finally, they pulled up to a small airfield where a hot air balloon waited. You're kidding, Rachel said. Staring at the enormous, colorful balloon. You said you wanted to feel like you were flying, James replied. This seems safer than throwing you off a building.
Ow.
They climbed into the basket, and as the balloon lifted off the ground, Rachel watched the city shrink below them. The setting sun painted everything in gold and orange, and for the first time in months, she felt completely at peace. Can I ask you something? James said as they floated through clouds. Anything. That morning you showed up covered in coffee. If you could go back, would you still do it? Still come to the interview, still take the job, still go through everything that came after. Rachel thought about the sabotage, the stress, the scrutiny. The nights, she cried herself to sleep, wondering if she was destroying someone else's life by refusing to quit. She thought about Patricia's hostility, the board meeting where everything hung in the balance, the constant pressure to prove she deserved to be there. Then she thought about Tommy's friendship, Margaret's mentorship, the thrill of winning impossible accounts, and the way James looked at her like she was the most extraordinary thing he had ever encountered. In a heartbeat, Rachel replied. Every struggle, every challenge, every moment of doubt. It brought me here, to this, and I would not trade this for anything. James pulled her close, careful not to disturb the balloon's balance. You know what the most incredible thing about you is?